Sean, it's a pleasant Thursday for us here, and this is going to be a special episode for you because it's the Rhode Island episode. It's Brian Boucher on this one. I might just take a step back and just let you guys talk, and hopefully the audience will understand it.
It's like Family Guy. It's nice to see you, Dan, by the way. Perfect weather to talk hockey all across the eastern seaboard. There's 7 inches of snow in Nashville. It's freezing cold here. It's 20 below in Toronto, where the All-Star game is going to be in a couple of weeks. I hope it warms up a little bit before we get there, Dan. But it's hockey weather, and it's hockey season. Things are really picking up. We are going to have a great show with Brian Boucher. We're going to talk mid-season, right? We're at the midpoint of the season. We'll do a little trophy trackers. Sam Reinhart, and being in the same conversation as Pavel Bure. Who would think that? But let's start across the state with Steven Stamkos and the Tampa Bay Lightning.
It's warm there, so that's the good thing. But Stamkos is not going to be traded. Julien BriseBois, the Lightning general manager, came out and said that earlier in the week, and I never once thought he was going to get traded, Sean, and I understand. Like, okay, he's a pending unrestricted free agent. They've put off negotiations with him until after the season, but the Lightning are right in the thick of the playoff race. Did you even before Julien BriseBois said that the other day, did you even consider Steven Stamkos as being a potential trade target for another team?
Consider it? Sure, I considered it, but I didn't think it was a reality. I don't think all unrestricted free agents to be are created equal, and I think Steven Stamkos is a bit of a unicorn in that, you know, who he is, how he's still performing, and what he means to that franchise. I mean, I think anybody can be traded. I know that we've learned that in the past, and we do know that the Tampa Bay Lightning, of all teams, will do what's best for the team and for trying to win a championship. They've moved talent out of there repeatedly because of the salary cap structure that they have in chasing championships. So, you know, you kind of wonder if anything's off the table, but Julien BriseBois came out and said that this is off the table. And I'm not surprised at all, because I think at some point, even as much as they've moved core players to try and continue to chase championships under a flat cap, there's certain things that you really can't do for the franchise or for their fan base.
Well, 100%. They can't trade him. And especially with the position that they're in right now. I mean, they're right in the thick of the wild card race right now. They are in wild card 2, I believe it is, as we talk right now. They're wild card 2. They've got 2 games more. They've played 2 more games than the teams around them, Toronto, Pittsburgh, Washington. But they're in wild card 2 right now, so they're in it. They've won a couple of games in a row here. They're trying to get in a groove here in the second half, but there's a bigger play here. There's a bigger picture here other than just this season. No, never once crossed my mind that Stamkos could be traded this season or before the deadline on March 8th. But what happens after the season? We've dabbled around this in previous episodes, and I'm looking at this right now. They want to put this off, the Stamkos future, what happens. To me, it really depends on what they do this season. They're probably looking at the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Washington Capitals. And they can look at Pittsburgh and they can say, well, they went all in on their legendary core guys. Malkin, Letang. We know that Crosby has already been signed, right? Washington, all in on re-signing Alex Ovechkin. They didn't want to let those players go, and they're trying to extend the window as long as they can. But you look at them right now, neither one of those teams made the playoffs last season, and they're borderline right now. So is that where you want to be if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning? Or do you look at it and say, if things go south this season and we don't make a run and we're not the team we think we can be, do we cut bait early on a legendary guy in Steven Stamkos and try to do it differently? Or do you want to give a 4 or 5 year contract to a 33-year-old player who is still at the top of his game but won't be for that much longer because, you know, nobody beats Father Time, right? So I think they're in that sort of debate, internal debate right now, looking at the Penguins, looking at the Capitals, and that may be why they're pushing this to the end of the season, to the offseason. Stamkos would sign right now. He wants to be there. I think he expressed that in the preseason, but it doesn't seem like the Lightning are ready to be there right now with him, and it's got to come down to what direction are we going to go in after this season And I think a lot of it has to do with what they do during this season.
Well, I'll tell you this. If they don't trade Steven Stamkos at the deadline and then they walk away from him, that's the worst possible thing. If you're going to walk away from Steven Stamkos in the offseason, walk away from him now. There's somebody that's going to give you a pretty penny for him 2 weeks before the deadline, especially with the way things are bottled up, right? I don't know how many teams are going to be selling, and if the Lightning are in that position where they're sellers and buyers at the same time and they're trying to do that crazy, tight rope walk that they've done a couple of times where they've moved pieces out and moved pieces in. There's no bigger piece than Stamkos, but to hold on to him and then say in the summer, oh, things didn't work out how we wanted, now we're going to move on from him, that's insane. That's completely crazy. You either don't trade him now and you keep him, or you trade him at the deadline. And, your comparison, you can go even further back to the Chicago Blackhawks. It's the same thing, right? With Kane and Taves, they kept that group together, and now they're paying for it. They've been in the lottery once. They're probably going to be in the lottery again here, hoping for another big pick to get it going again. But I think, if you ask anybody in Chicago, they'll pay that price for what they got. And I think anybody in Tampa will pay that price for that 3-year run to the Stanley Cup final. At some point, the pain comes. That's the way the league's set up. Nobody beats it forever.
Right, and the Penguins and the Capitals are trying to push the pain down the road. And successfully doing so, but also they're right in the middle now, which is also the murky middle. It's not really where you want to be either. You want to be either at the very top or approaching, or you want to be in a position to where you can retool it around to get back to the top. They're in the middle. They're pushing away that pain. It's coming. We know it's coming in Pittsburgh and Washington. Tampa has an ability here to not feel that pain, to retool it. Stamkos is the guy, right? I mean, Stamkos is the one. Do you want to re-sign him? If you re-sign him, you're buying more years. You're paying millions more, right? You still have Kucherov, and you got Point, and you got Sergachev, and Vasilevsky, and Anthony Cirelli, and they're all in their prime of their careers. Stamkos and Victor Hedman are not. They're coming out of the prime years of their careers. One is up at the end of this season. The other one is up at the end of next season. The Lightning have a big decision to make, but I'll go back. They can't trade him now. The only way they can do this is if they don't want to, if he's not going to be part of them next year, is to bite the bullet and walk away from him at the end of the season, and you get nothing in return then, but you will get the opportunity now to make another run. If you trade him, you're throwing in the white towel. It's a terrible message to the rest of your core guys who are still ready to go and raring and believing that they're a team that can win the Stanley Cup. You cannot trade him now in the position you're in. If they had tanked and they had not tanked, but if they had gone backwards this season and they were in the position of, say, the Buffalo Sabres are in right now or the Ottawa Senators are in right now, makes it a lot easier. But you can't do it, Sean. I mean, at the very least, you look at it and say we treat Stamkos as our own rental, and we use him in that capacity, even though he's arguably the most legendary player in franchise history. But the signal it sends to the rest of your team if you try to trade him now is just awful, which is why another reason why Julien Brisebois came out and said, we're not trading him. I mean, end all speculation.
Would you rather pull the Band-Aid off slow or fast? I'm a fast Band-Aid puller, right? So for PR, you're going to hold on to him, and then you're going to trade him in the summer for nothing and set your franchise further back? I don't get that. If he's an asset and he's valuable and you have no loyalty to him, to me, it's a loyalty play. To me, there are players in this league that have earned something from their franchise. He's one. Sidney Crosby's another one. Taves and Kane were others. You earn something by what you give the franchise, and I think that Steven Stamkos is that player. But if you don't believe that, then treat him like anybody else.
I think they believe that. I don't think this is PR.
Then you can't walk away. If you believe it, you can't walk away even in the summer. You have to hold on to him.
Now you don't. You don't. You keep him now because the position your team is in. You can deal with what happens in the offseason, and you explain it. If you walk away from him, you explain it. Listen, hey, we made the playoffs with Stamkos. We lost in the whatever happens, right? We wanted to keep him. He was a big part of this. He's a legendary player, but at this point, we need to go in a different direction. if you don't make the playoffs, you say, hey, we kept him because we believed in our team this season. It didn't work out. We have to go in a different direction now. This isn't just some guy that came along and is having a good year and he's a pending UFA. I mean, this is a different type of player. So I don't think you can move him right now. I think it was right by Julian Brisebois to come out and say they're not trading him. I never thought it was I never considered it a possibility, but I guess people were, and he ended that any potential speculation of it. So he stays. We'll see where it goes, but this is going to be interesting because what happens with the Lightning for the rest of this season will have a huge impact on what happens with the team going forward for the next several years, because it's not just Stamkos, it's Victor Hedman, and it's potentially John Cooper too.
I mean, I guess it's all of those guys. I just don't follow. I don't follow your logic, and if that's the logic that Brisebois is following as well, I don't follow that. Once you make this commitment, it's like a marriage. You don't just get to walk away and say, sorry, I changed my mind. Maybe I shouldn't have got married. Like, you're making that decision and you're forfeiting all the profit that you can make. They will get nothing for him as a free agent. They will get a king's ransom for him at the trade deadline.
Better to keep him. Also, are you willing? Here's another question for you, Sean. Are you willing to sign a 33-year-old Steven Stamkos to a 5-year deal at $7 million per?
Yes.
Okay. If you're willing to do that, let's just get it done, right? Just do it.
I'm willing to do it for a number of reasons. One, he's still in his prime. Two, he is the franchise, and he can pass along the ways of the franchise as he ages. And three, at some point, as much of a business as this is, I think there's loyalty, and I think he's earned loyalty because he's given loyalty.
I would sign him too.
Sometimes you pay for things that you can't quantify. You may not be paying for goals when he's 38 years old, but you're paying for something that's almost as important, which is an identity.
Well, I would sign him, but I would try to get him in a 3-year deal at the same AAV he's at right now, $8.5 million. Doesn't have to take a pay cut in terms of what he's getting, but shorter term. So it's like a 3-year deal instead of the 5-year deal. So the other guy in the state of Florida, Sean, and you brought it up at the start. By the way, we're going to have Brian Boucher on here shortly. We'll talk Flyers. We'll talk mid-season trophies, who's favorites, and all that stuff with Bouch. But the other guy, Sean, in the state of Florida is Sam Reinhart that we absolutely have to talk about. He's also a pending UFA, and I put this out on the good old X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days. How good must it be to be Sam Reinhart right now? You got 33 goals. You got goals in 8 straight games. That broke Pavel Bure's team record for most consecutive games with a goal. You're 28 years old. You're a pending UFA. Your team is good. You're going to make bank in the offseason or now, whenever they sign, if they wanted to sign him, and you regardless, you're going to fill your bank account just like you're filling the nets right now. It must be, oh, and by the way, you're living in South Florida, no state taxes, warm weather. Must be great to be Sam Reinhart right now.
Yeah, and I think you just laid out the case why it's going to be great to be Sam Reinhart in South Florida for an extended period of time. Like, I think that's a marriage that both sides want to make. I think he likes playing there. They just built that beautiful new practice rink. They ride their golf carts there to go to practice. Like, it's a different lifestyle. Again, we talked about at the top of this podcast, the weather in the Northeast, right? Buffalo's under 2 feet of snow, and we wish the best for all of our listeners in Western New York as they dig out from the latest blizzard. Cold snaps every place else, and you're sitting in Florida and it's 75, and you're on the beach, and you have a good team, you have a good coach, and you've certainly found the fountain of youth. I mean, he's not an old player, but he's a player who's found what he needs, whether it's system, belief, confidence. There, I don't know that you mess with that recipe.
He's the right-handed version of Chris Kreider, is what he is. And my point being is that he is scoring goals at an alarming rate in front of the net, tips, deflections from that inner slot area. He scores on the power play, 16 of them this season. He scores shorthanded, 4 goals shorthanded this season. He scores big goals, game-winning goals. He's got 9 of them. He doesn't need high shot volume. to score goals. He's only had 119 shots on goal this year. He's shooting 27.7%, but it's not unsustainable because of where he's getting his shots from and how he's scoring his goals. Chris Kreider for the Rangers took him a little while, had those consecutive 20-goal seasons, and it was looking good, and then he figured out who he was as a player and what he did really well, and he scored 52 goals. And now he should be a 40-goal scorer this season, right? Sam Reinhart maybe figured it out a little bit earlier than Chris Kreider did, but that's who he is as a player. He's a guy who's terrific around the net. He can score a ton of goals as long as he establishes his position. He's 6'3". He's got a big frame, and he's playing with some elite players. Barkov. I mean, he's just an elite centerman, right? It's an absolute must keep for the Florida Panthers. You cannot let this guy go. You have to pay for what you get here, and what you get is a heck of a lot. And at 28 years old, you sign him to an 8-year deal. You're going to get a lot of goals out of Sam Reinhart for a long period of time because he knows who he is now as a player. High draft pick, took him a while to figure it out, left Buffalo, went to Florida, and now he's got it all figured out.
Yeah, and that's the message you send to your fans, right? Like, things are picking up in Florida. They're in a good place. You know, they've been in the playoffs a couple of years in a row. You look at the stands this year, they're full almost every night. You know, there's a buzz around that city and around that team, and I think the last thing you can do is walk away from what legitimately is a budding superstar, right, to go along with Matthew Tkachuk and Barkov. Look, Barkov's a superstar, but I don't know how sexy he is, right? Like, as hockey fans, he's a sexy player, but it's not in the same way. Like, he doesn't bring you out of your seat. You know, and Sam can do that. You look at that first goal he scored last night against, or the goal he scored last night against Detroit, right? Like, that's a goal scorer's goal. That isn't in front of the net, the tips, the ugly. Like, that's just a pure snipe. So, you know, he can do it any way you want to do it. And I think, you know, that's what you need to do if you're Florida, is you need to say, hey, we built this, and now, you know, we discovered this diamond in the rough, and we can't let that walk away. We're going to do it. And they have a huge advantage. There's, you know, you look at it and there's no doubt about it. I mean, they can offer way more money or less money and still be okay because of the state taxes, right? There's guys, right, that contract that Nylander just signed, there's guys that are making $2 million less that are making more take-home money because of state taxes in places like Florida.
Before we get to Brian Boucher, boy, Sean, I mean, the team right here in our backyard in New Jersey, they need a goalie. They need a goalie in a bad way. And I understand. Look, I get it. Jack Hughes is out of the lineup. The Devils right now are 19-11-2 with Hughes in the lineup. They're 3-6-1 without him. They don't win without Jack Hughes. Dougie Hamilton's out. Jonas Siegenthaler's out. Andre Palat's out. Timo Meier just came back. He was out for a long time. They are beat up. They are banged up. It's going to be hard for them to score. It's going to be hard for them to win. It's way harder when your goalie is giving up rebounds right in the slot area and you're losing to a team like the Montreal Canadiens, who you should be beating. And with all due respect to the Montreal Canadiens, they're playing well above they're punching above their weight this season, okay? But the New Jersey Devils need a goalie. They need a goalie in a bad way. This team is way below in goals saved above expected. If they're not last, they're close to last in save percentage. There's no confidence, it looks like to me, in front of with their goaltenders right now, and we knew could be an issue, and it is now ballooned into a big issue for the Devils.
An upgrade in goal would be great. I personally think Nico Daws has been okay for them. You know, he gave up the 3 goals last night. He gave up 3 against Boston with an empty netter. I think he's played pretty well. I don't know if he's the answer, but I will tell you this. You know, you look at Stuart Skinner, right, in Edmonton, and we all wanted to run him out of town at the beginning of the year when they were bad. Oh, Edmonton doesn't have a goalie. They have all this great talent, and their goalies are going to make them sink into the non-playoff ether. Stuart Skinner's a pretty good goalie right now. Why? Because Edmonton figured out how to play defense. The New Jersey Devils right now have John Marino and 2 rookies in Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec. That's their defense. What do you do with that? If you're a goalie, what do you do with that? You are facing high danger after high danger after high danger chance. Dominik Hasek could not post a league average save percentage for the New Jersey Devils right now.
League average, they'd be a playoff team right now.
But he couldn't do it because their defense is John Marino and two guys that have however many games. Simon Nemec doesn't even have how many games the Devils played. Luke Hughes is a veteran compared to Simon. And that's their defense. Good luck, Lindy Ruff.
Yeah, listen, you're right. There's no question about it. But league average would get the Devils in the playoffs right now. Brian Boucher, former NHL goalie, works in TNT, Philadelphia Flyers broadcast. He joined us. We did talk about the Devils goaltending, a lot about the Flyers and some other things. Here's our interview with Brian Boucher. Bouch, thanks so much for joining us. So let's dive right in to the Philadelphia Flyers. I remain surprised, and I continue to be surprised. Why shouldn't I be anymore?
Well, if you watch them play, it's, their style of play is not a fluke. They play fast. They play off the rush. They're not just a hardworking, gritty, play off the forecheck type of team. They don't, I think it's well documented. They don't have a lot of stars on their team, so they don't have game breakers per se, but if you watch them play, they play fast. There's a method to the madness, I guess you could say, and they generate offense. And I know they're not scoring, they're not in the upper half of goals scored in the NHL, but if some guys can get their shooting percentages up and they can start to bury a few, they might creep up in goals per game. So that, plus the fact that they defend well, their penalty kill has been exceptional. Their goaltending has been maybe their strongest part of their team. To me, that all equates into a team that you should not be surprised at the results they have. Now, having said that, they got some tough opponents coming up in the Eastern Conference. They haven't played the top teams in the East just yet. So that part will be a tough test, but they've matched up well against the teams out West, and they've been fantastic on the road. So it's, this is now turning into a situation where, they keep doing what they're doing. They're going to be in the playoffs.
The formula that you just laid out, we kind of all expected that from a Tortorella coach team at some point. Is there a little bit of a surprise at how quickly it's taken?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but I got to say, when I looked at this lineup at the start of the year, I thought, like, if they were healthy, they had a top nine that I felt was a good lineup. Like, I looked at them, I said, man, if they're all healthy and they can all play, it's a good lineup. And then an identity fourth line, to me, it all looked like it's something that could, be a team that would be tough to play against. Now, I think last year Torts' idea was about laying a foundation for this team to their expectations on what they have to do away from the puck. This year, I think he's been more willing to, give free reins to his team to be more offensive, to when they have the puck, to try things. And I think that's leading to the idea that they're playing fast, that they go north with that puck extremely quick, high flips. It's out of their zone, and they're skating into pucks, and they're generating offense that way. Their D have been awfully active. I mean, Sanheim has been in the play almost all year long. Sean Walker, same thing. Zamula is starting to get more confident offensively now, not only just on the power play, but 5-on-5. And then you add in Jamie Drysdale coming in. He's a guy that is going to be their most dynamic offensive defenseman when he gets going. So you got to give Torts credit. What he said he was going to do, he's done, and that's lay the foundation to be a strong defensive team last year. This year, he's given them a longer leash to do things when they have the puck to try and generate offense, and it's worked out. And if they, like I said, if some guys can score more regularly, guys like Tippett, Forster, Frost, and their power play can improve by a couple of % here in the second half. I mean, we're looking at a team that's scoring north of 3 goals a game, and maybe like 3.25. And to me, you do that with the way you defend, that's a pretty darn good hockey team.
One of the first things he said, Tortorella, when he took over the team was it was a bad rum, because he says rum instead of room, by the way. It's just the New Englander and all of you guys. But anyway, he talked about culture and the room and all that. And it weeded out a few guys, didn't it? right? I mean, and not to say this is they're all bad guys that left or whatever. It just the dynamic there seems to have changed. Yes, you add in Couturier. Yes, you add in Atkinson, who weren't there. They were there, but they weren't playing last year. But it seems like there's also a little bit of addition by subtraction here too. Do you get that feel as well?
Yeah, 100%. No doubt. And look, you don't want to disparage guys that are out the door now. That's not what it's about. But I think if you look at the back end, I feel like this is Travis Sanheim's back end now. Like this is his team. He's the leader of that defense. Before, I think with Provorov here, there was some question as to where does Sanheim fit into this mix. And Sanheim was a near tradable piece in the offseason. Didn't work out that way. And maybe it's the best trade they never made, right? And he took it like a pro, came in, has been great. So, Provorov gone, I think has helped Sanheim. That's just being honest and being real. I think the Kevin Hayes stuff, it's been well documented that he and Torts probably didn't see eye to eye, with the way that they want to play. And if you got a player that's not thrilled to be here, that can definitely take away from what the coach is trying to accomplish and the team is trying to accomplish. So that's another situation. JVR, who's been a great flyer, a couple of different stints, he was on an expiring contract. I think he was thinking he was going to get traded at some point during last year. It never happened. When guys are on expiring deals and they're set to be UFAs, those are kind of odd situations inside the room. JVR is a great guy, but I think bringing in guys that are younger, giving them bigger roles, I think that's helped as well. So I think, yeah, you get rid of some people in the room and you give opportunities to some younger players, some hungrier players. You get what you get. Plus, you add in some vets like Sean Couturier and Cam Atkinson, who are healthy for the most part. And you got a much different looking team, a much different looking vibe in that room, and a group that plays hard for one another.
Is Connor Hart goalie now that the Flyers expected when they drafted him?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. I think he's a top 10 goalie in the NHL. And I think that's what they envisioned when they drafted him. And I think that's what he is right now. And I think he's benefiting from, having a solid partner with him in Sam Ersson. I think it's beneficial for him to have a guy that can win hockey games, and it allows him to get quality rest so that he can have quality starts. And even though every goalie says they want to play every night, I don't think it's in the best interest of the team to play every night sometimes. And I think this has really turned out to be a nice combination in goal. It's given the Flyers a chance to win every single night. And I think it's a good push for Hart to have. I think in the past he's had some veteran guys with him that were great mentors, but I think now he's at the point in his career where I think he needs a partner that if he takes a night off, the team has a chance to win, and it gives him enough rest so that he can be sharp his next game. And he's been very good, and so is Sam Ersson. The goaltending has been maybe the strongest aspect of this team's game, along with its penalty kill, and they're a big part of the penalty kill as well.
Well, if you go up the turnpike, the goaltending is a lot different in New Jersey with the Devils. And I wanted to go there with you real fast, Boosh. Just second to last in the league. Sean and I were talking about this before. Second to last in the league right now in save percentage. They're well down in goals saved above expected, in the negative. When a team is not getting consistent goaltending, I understand there's injuries. Hughes is out. Hamilton's out, right? The Siegenthaler's out. Palat. Meyer just came back. But when you're not getting consistent goaltending, we always hear the belief in in what's behind you starts to waver and whatnot. Is that the Devils' biggest problem right now? Is that they just don't have the goaltending to back up the way they want to play?
Yes. I think sometimes this can become, it's like the elephant in the room, right? And everybody's talking about it. We've been talking about this around the league for over a year now. I feel like is the Devils' goaltending good enough? And I think as long as that story is still out there, it's going to be a story unless somebody steps up. And truthfully, nobody stepped up there on a consistent basis. So yeah, I think it affects the way guys play, the confidence that they want to play with. you've always heard stories about like guys that played with Dominic Hasek back in the day. Those Buffalo teams had no business being where they were, but guys took chances because they knew they could, because they had a guy back there that would save them. When you're not sure if you're going to get the save, it affects the way you want to play. It affects the confidence that you have in your team game. And I feel like for New Jersey, it's the missing piece. And whether or not Tom Fitzgerald addresses that missing piece, does he do it this year with the injuries that they've had? Is this the year that they do it, or they do it another year? I'm not really sure, but I don't get the sense that the goaltending that they have right now is the type of goaltending that can win them a playoff round. They might get in, they may, but I don't know if they can win a playoff round. And is that good enough for a team that I think should have higher expectations than that? I don't think it is. So, Nico Dawes was out for a long time. Maybe it's his opportunity to try and get in there and see if he can do it. Maybe that's a trial run up until trade deadline. But man, I think there's no question that the goaltending isn't good enough. It needs to be better, and if not, they have to address it.
How hard is it on a goalie to move in season, especially at the trade deadline? I'm trying to remember like a goalie that's moved that's really made an impact. And we always talk about him moving, and then they do. Like the classic example is Ryan Miller when he got traded. Everybody thought that was the missing piece, and he never fit in for a variety of reasons, right? Different defense, communication, everything. You've played the position. I'm curious, any of these teams that we're talking about that might want to add a goalie, whether it's a starter or a veteran backup, like how difficult is that to integrate into your team?
I think it's hard. Truthfully, I think goaltenders, when they play in a system and they know what the system is, the game's predictable for them, and there's a comfortability for that guy, especially with that position. It's so important. It is hard to change mid-season and really have an impact. And Ryan Miller, who is a borderline Hall of Famer, right? A very good goalie. It was a struggle for him when he went to St. Louis, and for a variety of reasons, it can be hard, especially if you were in one place for a long, long time. I think it can be even more difficult at times because there's more in play there. It's not just about how the style of play that the team has. I mean, there's just the comfortability of being in one place and the familiarity with being in one place for so long. It's you're really changing a lot of things right on the fly. So it's one of those positions. It's hard to do. I think it's probably better to do it in the off season, just to give a guy some runway without the pressure of like right up to the deadline, leading right up to the playoffs. That can be a lot to throw on a guy's plate. But sometimes deals can present themselves, where maybe the deadline is the best time to do it. And it's not that the expectation is that you're going to get the job done this year, but maybe it's for looking down the road too, right? I mean, unless the person is a UFA and they're going to hit free agency on July 1. But I think in a case like the New Jersey Devils, if they're looking for a goaltender, it's not just going to be for this playoff run. They got to be looking for a goaltender that's going to be with them for several years, because this is a team with the talent that they have up front. This should be a team that we're talking about being in the top 4 in the NHL for the next 5 to 8 years.
So who in your mind, Boosh, then has been the best goalie in the league this year? It's NHL.com. It's Trophy Tracker week. We're doing trophies across, a story on them each week. I got Hellebuyck. I think he's the guy this season, who's the favorite right now for the Vezina. The Jets have been great, but what's your take? Who do you think has been the guy this season that would be leading the Vezina vote right now?
Yeah, to me, it's Hellebuyck. I think Demko's right there with him, but I think Hellebuyck has been that much more better. And I think the other thing too is like with Hellebuyck, I think he's been so good for so long that if there was a tiebreaker, I would give it to the guy who's done it before, right? So I think Demko's been great, but I think Hellebuyck has been just a little bit better. And I don't think anybody expected Vancouver and Winnipeg to be where they are right now. But I don't know, maybe the bigger surprise is Winnipeg to me than Vancouver. I know Vancouver's a huge story, but for some reason, I just never envisioned Winnipeg being where they are right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with, as we talked about with New Jersey's lack of confidence, I think it's in the confidence in their number one guy in Hellebuck, who plays a ton and kind of sets the tone. And I was shocked that he signed an extension when he did, just like Scheifele. Like, I never thought that would be the case. I always thought that maybe he would end up in a different spot, and it didn't happen. And I think the team is fed off of those guys being leaders and deciding that they want to be in Winnipeg long term.
I thought he was going to get traded to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Like that was my feeling. Like, and you I'm glad you brought up the Jets too, because those guys signing Scheifele and Hellebuck, that erased the questions. You know, we Sean and I had Scott Arniel on last week. We talked about this. That erased the questions, but then you know the impact they're making too. It's amazing the consistency that they've had this season. I 100% agree with you that the Jets, to me, you know, are the bigger surprise this season than say the Canucks are, because it's, you know, they look like the most unstable team,
right?
You know, of the 16 that made the playoffs last year. Now they look like the most stable. It's amazing.
Yeah. Because those two guys signed extensions, and Vancouver's not as big a surprise because of the job that Tocchet did when he got hired last year. If you look at the numbers, you know, he got that team to defend. Their numbers were great. They turned it around. So it's not, we shouldn't be as shocked. Like, we saw that this was, the foreshadowing was there, whether you want to believe it or not. It was there. The evidence was there. I think Talk has done an amazing job there in Vancouver. But to me, that you're right. The bigger surprise was Winnipeg, because I didn't expect Scheifele and Hellebuck to sign long-term when they did. And I think that set the tone for the rest of their group. And that's why they've been so good.
Do you believe in the Colorado Avalanche? You're just talking a little bit about the West. Do you believe in the Avalanche? I mean, they're right there, 61 points going into the game tonight on Thursday against the Bruins. You know, Georgiev has the most wins in the league, but the save percentage is .895, and they're, you know, they're riding him at a rate that we don't see any goalie get rid of anymore. He's going to play 70+ games if they don't find some help for him.
Yeah, I'll answer the Georgiev stuff first. I that worries me. I don't think you should be playing a guy that much in the regular season. I mean, you really run the risk of running him into the ground. And if that happens, then there's a concern. So I think they got to make a decision on what they want to do. I know Annunen played the other night in Ottawa, and at times looked good in that game. And maybe the game plan is that he plays in the minors. It's better him to play than to sit and watch. So he's getting some reps in the minors. So maybe that's the thought process there. But also maybe the thought process is to go out and get a number two that can be a viable option if Georgiev goes down in the play down the stretch. Do I believe in this Avalanche team? Yes, I do. The star power on that team, you can't ignore it. It is. I've done a bunch of Avalanche games this year. They are the most exciting team to watch, in my opinion. I know Edmonton probably is right up there with them, but you watch McKinnon play, Rantanen, Makar. I mean, these guys are electric, and they've dealt with their adversities, no doubt, but they've won before. And a team that has won before, and the loss that they had last year to the Seattle Kraken, this is a very hungry group. And you know, I think that the West is tough. It's tough to handicap it because there are a couple of other good teams with a lot of, you know, star-studded talent. But I do believe in the Avalanche. I wonder if they're going to go and get that center. Everybody talks about it. I kind of still, I've seen Ryan Johansson play in the postseason where he showed me that he's got another level to his game. He did it in Nashville. I know it's been a few years back, and I'm just waiting for it to kind of to pop out. I love Ross Colton. I like that signing. So I wonder if they're going to go get that center, and what is it going to be, a big one? Is it going to be kind of like a medium type player that maybe it's not as big a name, but yeah, I think the bigger need for them is a number two guy that they would feel confident in turning to come playoffs if they had to. I just think their studs are they're good enough to carry them. You just would hate to see an injury to your starting goalie buckle your team.
I'm glad Sean brought up the Avalanche, and you know, last one for me, the Hart Trophy. Again, Trophy Tracker Week here at NHL.com. You know, at NHL.com. To me, it's Nathan McKinnon, and it's almost a runaway, even though he's even with Kucherov in points. The way he's played. Do you agree Do you think it? If you do you think it's a landslide right now for him, or is it a lot closer than I may be giving it credit for here?
I don't know if it's a landslide, but I do agree with you. I think it is McKinnon as well. Um, what's he playing, like 24 minutes a game, almost 24 minutes? Like, it's out of control. Like, and he wants to play. I get the sense that he wants to be the man. And like I said, I've done a bunch of Avalanche games so far this year, and he's impressive to watch. And we're at the halfway point, so I would give it to him right now. I don't know if it's a landslide, because I think what Matthews has done is pretty impressive, right? What's he got? 34 goals. Maybe it's more than that. I don't even know, but it's high. Kucherov, I got to be honest with you, I haven't watched a ton of Tampa this year, so I feel like I'm a little naked on what he's brought to the table. But McDavid is a guy too that I know we're at the halfway point, but if he continues to do what he's been doing, it might be a different story come the end of the year. I feel like Edmonton is just, everybody expected them to be good. Everybody expected them to be a cup contender, and they're starting to play like I think a lot of people expected them to play. And I'm sure McDavid's going to have a lot to say about this when we get to the finish line. But right now, for the first half of the year, I think McKinnon he's been a man possessed. He looked like he came into the year really pissed off, and it's been great for the Avalanche because he's been terrific.
Well, Brian, thanks for joining us. You're a man possessed in the broadcast booth. We enjoy watching you on both the Flyers and TNT. What's on your plate for the rest of the week?
Well, thank you. I like to be a man possessed. We got the Dallas tonight at home with the Flyers. Then Saturday we get the Avalanche in the afternoon for the Flyers. Sunday the Ottawa Senators in the afternoon, and then next week TNT. I am in Boston on Wednesday, and then on Friday I got a big alumni game for the Flyers against the Bruins alumni. The Flyers are inducting Mark Recchi into the Flyers Hall of Fame, so it's going to be a nice celebration on Friday night. We got to play a game, get through that game, and then the anxiety can go away, and we can celebrate Mark Recchi getting inducted into the Hall of Fame on Saturday before the Bruins game at 1 p.m. So a lot of fun coming up here in the next couple of weeks.
Well, enjoy it. Brian, thanks so much for jumping on with us. All right.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Sean, that was really good stuff with Brian Boucher. And I got to be honest, I'm glad you brought up the question on how hard it is for a goaltender to change teams. And Ryan Miller, mid-season. And Ryan Miller being the example that we all use because that's the most recent we've seen it. It didn't really work out for the Blues or for Ryan Miller when he was traded. Elvis Merzlikins could be a goalie that changes teams mid-season. I mean, he's asked for a trade. He's been gone public with it. It actually ruins the Blue Jackets' leverage that they had because Merzlikins has gone public with asking for a trade. But he's a guy that could do that. He could change teams. And so we might get another example of a goalie changing teams, and let's see how it works out for Merzlikins because I don't think that the Blue Jackets can keep him if they want and trade him in the offseason. He signed for a long period of time, but I would imagine you'd want to get this done as quickly as possible, but you have to gain some leverage back. I touched on this in the mailbag too.
Yeah, I don't think there's any lost leverage. You're not giving other people in the NHL enough credit, right? There's spies all over this league. Everybody has insider information.
True.
People knew Elvis wasn't happy. He's not a guy that really hides it. They have 3 goaltenders. All those things go into it. Look, you got to pay the freight if you take him. He's got an above average save percentage. We were just talking about the Devils. An above average gets it done. And he's letting out the monster now. He's mad.
He is.
To me, he's maybe the most interesting goalie on the market, other than maybe Marc-Andre Fleury. But but Elvis is more. He's not a rental, right? He's a long-term solution. You're deciding that not only will he help you this year, but he'll help you for 3 years down the road, and that's a pretty big investment to make.
Yeah, listen, I think he's a very interesting guy to watch here as we approach the trade deadline, less than now 2 months away, March 8th, simply because he did go public with the trade request. He is, like you said, a future goalie and a current goalie for you, current, future. He signed for a while. The Blue Jackets also, when I talk about leverage, Sean, I mean, the Blue Jackets also took it away from themselves by benching him. They said you're not good enough to play for us right now. That led to a trade request. That led to him going public with the trade. So that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. It could be New Jersey, and it could be a great fit, but it might be a great fit starting next season. It might not be a great fit starting right now because you're going into a team as a goalie trying to figure out the way the team plays in front of you. And it's not always the easiest thing, as Boucher touched on. All right, a couple other things here before we get out of here. Sean, Trophy Tracker. We're doing it at NHL.com this week. I think we both agree, along with Brian Boucher, on Connor Hellebuck as the Vezina. We're in agreement on that one, right?
Correct.
All right. I have McKinnon as the Hart. Bouch has McKinnon. Who do you got?
I got Quinn Hughes. And it was really, really close, like threads close. It's just, to me, the year he's having, the numbers he's putting up are unbelievable. But he's also responsible for more, right, than Nathan McKinnon is. I mean, Nathan's a great 200-foot player, but Quinn's playing, huge minutes. He's responsible on both ends of the ice. He's much better defensively than he's been. He's a huge, huge reason why Vancouver is where they are. You take him out, and I don't know if they're a team battling for first place in the league. And you could say the same for McKinnon. But when it came down to it, and I don't know if it's just because I'm contrary, because McKinnon was pretty, when I did the voting, McKinnon was pretty dominant, and I voted before I counted all the votes, so I wasn't influenced in that way. But maybe it's just my contrariness. As people have experienced on this podcast more than once, I like to swim against the current.
I can't sit here and argue Quinn Hughes in the season argue against Quinn Hughes in the season he's having. To me, he's the runaway favorite right now. Well, maybe not runaway, but he's the favorite right now for the Norris Trophy, right? But Nathan McKinnon, Sean, he's got 72 points, 1.67 points per game. He's playing more than 23 minutes a game, which is defenseman minutes, okay? He had points in 19 straight games, and now he's got a 9-game point streak ongoing right now with one game in between where he didn't get a point. So I'm not very good at math, but that's 28 of 29 games where he's got a point. I think there's 7 games this season where McKinnon does not have a point. It's the consistency, it's the scoring, it's how he drives that team, who has a guy, by the way, who could easily be considered one of the most dangerous players in the league and is considered one of the most dangerous players in the league in Cale Makar. But McKinnon, to me, this season is at another level. He keeps taking it to another level for himself. Quinn Hughes is doing the same, but McKinnon is just doing it at an alarming rate in terms of production and ice time and everything else he does for a forward. He gets on the ice. He is like, it's amazing because he is a speedy forward in a power forward body, and I don't think there's anybody else like him. He's a bit of a unicorn. I don't think there's anybody else like him in the NHL who can play with the speed, the skill, and the power that he plays with.
To me, he's a little like a young Malkin. Right? He's like a linebacker and a finesse forward's body, right? Like he can do all those power forward things, like you said, but he's also super skilled. And normally I'll take you to task for your opinions, but I can't take you to task for this one. Like I don't think that's a wrong decision.
I have Hughes as the Norris. I would imagine you have Hughes as a Norris winner if he's the most valuable player at this point. Jack Adams, that's an interesting one. I think the Jack Adams Award comes down to a number of different guys. Right now, I have John Tortorella. We just talked Flyers with Boucher for a while here, and they're the team to me that has come out of nowhere. I'll remain surprised because when we were going into the season, at no point did I think the Philadelphia Flyers were going to be a playoff team. At no point did I think that. I thought that they would be hard to play against because that's what Tortorella teams are, but they didn't have enough skill. They didn't have enough goal scoring. I wondered about Carter Hart, but I wondered about their depth, their defense, all of it. And you look at what John Tortorella's done. To me, he's the Jack Adams Award favorite as we speak right now. But I could sit here and make a case for Rick Tocchet. I can make a case for Rick Bowness. I can make a case for Peter Laviolette. And heck, I can make a case for Chris Knobloch. because all the Oilers have done since he's gotten there is win.
Talkett's my guy right now, but I was one of the few that had Knoblauch on a ballot. I'm not waiting.
I had it.
I think he's done a brilliant job there. And I don't know, what he's done. I think he's just given them confidence and let them go play. And sometimes as a coach, it's not the X's and O's. It's just, hey, I believe in you. Go do this. And that's kind of what Edmonton's done. And, as they continue, he should get more and more credit for it. But when I look at it and what Vancouver's done and where they are and how well their big guys are playing, like, everybody says, oh, you have a lot of star players, you're going to be a good team. Sometimes it's hard to make them mesh. And he's got some personalities on that team that are a little rugged to get together, right? Like really good players that are really headstrong. And I think he's done a really brilliant job with it. It all started last year, I think, at the exit interview process. And he's changed the culture of that team. And they're very cohesive now. And so, look, if it goes to John Tortorella, God bless him. He deserves it. He's done, we talked about it with Bush. I think he's done it in a much faster way than anybody in that organization expected. But at the midpoint, I'm still riding the Tocchet train.
I'll tell you what, the thing with the Flyers that's going to be fascinating is how they play here in the last. They've played 44 games, they got 38 left, right? And it's a hard style to play. It's a hard grind for 82 games to be able to play the way that they're playing without the guy on their team who you just say, we don't have it tonight, but you got to go win it for us, right? They don't have McKinnon, they don't have Kucherov, they don't have McDavid, they don't have anybody close. I'm curious to see if they can keep it up. That's one of the biggest questions I think going into the second half for as we are now in the second half for the entire league is, can the Flyers continue to do it? So far, they've shown absolutely no reason to think that they can't. But at the same time, where are we in mid-February when they're playing the outdoor game at MetLife against the Devils, right? What about as we approach March and they're not going to be a buyer because Keith Jones has said that. Keith Jones and Danny Briere are not going to go all in on this season and trade future picks and prospects because they're building this thing for the long haul. So can they survive this style of play for a full 82-game season? I think it's going to be interesting to see if they do fade or if they continue to just keep riding it.
Yeah, of course it will. And then, look, you got the final award, and it's the rookie, and, Bedard was a unanimous choice, but he's out now. Does anybody catch up? Do you think anybody catches up and overtakes him?
I think Brock Faber will catch up. I don't think he might even overtake him, but then Bedard will come back, and he'll take it right back.
Yeah, I think Brock Faber should catch him. I don't think he will because I don't think that defensemen ever get the credit they deserve in any award, particularly the Rookie of the Year award, and how difficult it is to play defense. And he's playing at a level we've seen very few rookies play it at.
Yeah. Well, all of it is on NHL.com right now, the Trophy Tracker stuff. So go read that along with all of our other coverage. And we thank Brian Boucher for jumping on with us. Great conversation with him. And Sean, it's a big night of hockey. Got an extra game Thursday night with the Buffalo Sabres and Chicago Blackhawks. Enjoy it. And everybody out there, enjoy the hockey.